Book of Heaven, Volume 4, Part 3. October 12, 1900. The most powerful enemies of man are the love of pleasures, of riches, and of honors. My adorable Jesus continues to come. This morning he was wearing a thick crown of thorns. I removed it very gently. I put it onto my head, and I said, "Lord, help me to drive it in." And he, "This time I want you to drive it in yourself. I want to see what you can do, and how you want to suffer for love of me." I drove it in quite thoroughly, more so since it was about showing him how far my love of suffering for Jesus would reach. So much so that he himself, all moved, clasping me, told me, "Enough, enough, for my heart cannot bear seeing you suffer more." And while I remained very much in suffering, my beloved Jesus would do nothing but come and go. After this he assumed the appearance of the crucified. He shared his pains with me, and said to me, "My daughter, the most powerful enemies of man are the love of pleasures, of riches, and of honors. These enemies render man unhappy because they penetrate deep into his heart and consume him continuously. They embitter him. They drag him down so much as to make him lose all happiness. And I on Calvary defeated these three enemies and obtained for man the grace to conquer them too, giving back to him the lost happiness. But man, always ungrateful and heedless, rejects my grace and fiercely loves these enemies, which put the human heart in a continuous torture." Having said this, he disappeared, and I comprehended with such clarity the truthfulness of these words that I felt abhorrence and hate toward these enemies. May the Lord be always blessed, and may everything be for his glory. October 14th, 1900. The dangerous scourge of the middle classes. Only innocence snatches God's mercy and mitigates his just indignation. This morning I felt so dazed that I could not understand myself, nor was I able to go in search of my highest good as I usually do. Every now and then he would move within my interior and would make himself seen, and embracing the whole of me and compassionating me, he would say to me, "Poor daughter, you are right that you cannot be without me. How could you live life without your beloved?" And I, stirred by his words, said, "Ah, my beloved, what a hard martyrdom life is, because of the intervals in which I am forced to be without you. You yourself are saying that I am right, and then you leave me." He hid furtively, as if he did not want me to hear what he was saying to me, and I was left in my dazedness again, unable to say anything else. When he saw me dazed again, he came out and said, "You are all my contentment. In your heart I find true rest, and resting in it, I experience the dearest delights." And I, stirring myself again, said, "For me also you are all my contentment, so much so that all other things are nothing but bitternesses for me." And since he withdrew again, I remained halfway through my words, more dazed than before. And this is how the morning went on. It seemed he felt like playing a little bit. After this, I felt myself outside of myself, and I saw unknown persons approaching, dressed as middle-class folk. On seeing them, the people were all horrified and screamed with fright and distress, especially the children. And they said, "If these set upon us, it is over for us." And they added, "Hide the young girls! Poor youths, if they are caught in the hands of these." So turning to the Lord, I said, "Pity, mercy, move this scourge away, so dangerous for miserable humanity. Let the tears of innocence move you to compassion." And he, "Ah, my daughter, only because of innocence do I have regard for others. It alone snatches my mercy and mitigates my just indignation." October 15th, 1900. Contention between the confessor and Jesus for the crucifixion of Luisa. This morning, after I received communion, Blessed Jesus let me hear his voice, saying, "My daughter, this morning I feel all the necessity to be refreshed. Oh, please take my pains upon yourself a little bit, and let me take some rest in your heart." And I, "Yes, my good, let me feel your pains, and while I suffer in your place, you will have all the ease to be able to refresh yourself and take some sweet rest. I only ask of you to wait a little longer until I remain alone, so that no one may see me suffer, because it seems to me that the confessor is still here." And he, "What does it matter if the Father is present? Wouldn't it be better if instead of having one to refresh me, I had two? That is you suffering, and he concurring with me with my same intention." At that moment I saw the confessor placing the intention of the crucifixion, and immediately, without the slightest hesitation, the Lord shared with me the pains of the cross. Then, after I was in those sufferings for a little while, the confessor called me to obedience. Jesus withdrew, and I tried to submit to the one who commanded me, when in one instant my sweet Jesus came back again, wanting to subject me to the pains of the crucifixion for the second time. But Father did not want it. When I would conform to Jesus, that is, to suffering, Jesus would come. When the confessor would see that I was beginning to suffer, he would stop the suffering with the obedience, and Jesus would withdraw. I would suffer a great pain indeed in seeing him withdraw, but I did as much as I could to obey. And at times, seeing the confessor present, I would let them deal with it, waiting to see who would win, whether obedience or our Lord. I seemed to see obedience and Jesus contending, both powerful and capable of facing a fight. After they fought well, as I tried to see who was winning, the Queen Mamma came, who, drawing near Father, said to him, "My son, this morning that he himself wants her to suffer, let him do. Otherwise no one will be spared the chastisements, not even in part." At that moment, as Father became as though distracted from keeping up the fight, Jesus, the winner, subjected me to the pains again, but with such vehemence and bitter spasms that I myself do not know how I remained alive. When I thought I was dying, obedience again called me back, and I just barely found myself inside myself. Blessed Jesus, being refreshed but not yet content, upon coming back, wanted to repeat it for the third time. However, arming herself with strength, this time obedience won, and my beloved Jesus was defeated. In spite of this, every now and then he kept trying. Who knows, he might win again. So much so that he gave me no respite, and I had to say, "But my Lord, keep still a little bit and leave me alone. Don't you see that obedience has taken up arms and does not want to yield to you? So have patience, and if you want to repeat it the third time, promise me that you will let me die." And Jesus, "Yes, come." I told this to Father, and also in this, obedience was inexorable, in spite of the fact that my sweet good was calling me, saying, "Luisa, come." I told that he was calling me, but the answer was a curt no. What a nice obedience this is, since she wants to act like a madam in everything and over everything. She wants to meddle in things which do not belong to her, such as my dying. Besides, how nice, exposing a poor unhappy one to the dangers of dying, letting her touch the harbor of eternal happiness with her own hand, and then, to show that she can act like a madam in everything, by dint of the strength that she possesses, she holds her back and keeps her lying in the miserable prison of her body. And if one asks, why all this? First, she does not answer, and then in her mute language she tells you, "Why? Because I am a madam and I have empire over everything." It seems that if one wants to be at peace with this blessed obedience, it takes the patience of a saint. Not only that, but the patience of our Lord himself. Otherwise one would be in continuous frictions with her, because this is about her wanting to touch the extremes. So seeing that he could win nothing, the blessed Lord calmed down at the obedience and gave me a break. He mitigated the pains I was suffering and said to me, "My beloved, in the pains you have suffered, I wanted to have you experience the fury of my justice by pouring it upon you a little bit. If you could see with clarity what point men have made it reach, and how the fury of my justice has taken arms against them, you would tremble like a leaf, and would do nothing but pray me to pour the pains upon yourself." Then he seemed to sustain me in my sufferings, and in order to cheer me, he said, "I feel better, and you?" And I, Lord, who can tell you what I feel? It seems to me as if I had been crushed inside a machine. I feel such exhaustion of strengths that if you do not infuse vigor in me, I cannot come round. And he, "My beloved, it is necessary that you feel the pains with intensity at least once in a while. First for yourself, because as good as a piece of iron may be, if it is left for a long time without putting it in the fire, it always comes to contract a little bit of rust. Second, for me, because if I did not unload myself upon you for too long, my fury would become so ignited that I would have no regard for the world, nor would I spare it in the least. And if you did not take my pains upon yourself, how could I keep my word of sparing the world the chastisements in part? After this, the confessor came to call me to obedience, and so I returned inside myself. October 17th, 1900. A suffering soul and a most humble prayer make Jesus lose all his strength and render him so weak as to let himself be bound by that soul. The appearance of justice. As my adorable Jesus continued to come, I seemed to see him in such great suffering as to arouse compassion. Throwing himself into my arms, he said to me, "My daughter, break the fury of my justice, otherwise—" At that moment I seemed to see divine justice, armed with swords, with darts of fire, such as to strike terror, and also the strength with which she can act. All frightened, I said, "How can I break your fury if I see you so strong as to be able to annihilate heaven and earth in one simple instant?" And he, yet a suffering soul and a most humble prayer, make me lose all my strength, and render me so weak as to let myself be bound by that soul, as she pleases. And I, ah, Lord, in what an ugly appearance is justice showing herself. And Jesus added, "She is not ugly. If you see her armed like this, it is because of men. But in herself, she is good and holy, like my other attributes, because there cannot be even a shadow of evil in me. It is true that her appearance seems harsh, piercing, bitter, but her fruits are sweet and delicious." Having said this, he disappeared. October 20th, 1900. Just as justice wants satisfaction for what is unjust, so does love want the vent of loving and of being loved. This morning, on coming, my adorable Jesus made me see his attributes, and he said to me, "My daughter, all of my attributes are in continuous attitude for men, and all of them demand their tribute." Then he added, "Just as justice wants satisfaction for what is unjust, so does my love want the vent of loving and of being loved. You place yourself inside justice and pray, repair, and when you receive some blow, have the patience to bear it. Then move into my love and give me the vent of loving. Otherwise I would remain defrauded in love. As for example, this time I feel all the necessity to give vent to my constrained love, and if I were not allowed to do it, I would languish and faint." As he was saying this, he began to kiss me, caress me, and make me so many tendernesses of love that I have no words to manifest them. And he wanted me to requite him, saying, "Just as I feel the need to pour myself out with you in love, so do you have the need to pour yourself out in love for me. Isn't it true?" After we poured ourselves out in love with each other, he disappeared. October 22nd, 1900. Doubts of Luisa about the things that happened to her. She wants to know whether they are from God or from the devil. Obedience does not have human reason. Her reason is divine. This morning I was all oppressed, and with a fear that it might not be blessed Jesus who operates in me, but the devil. But in spite of this, I could not refrain from seeking him and desiring him. However, as soon as he deigned to come, he told me, "What is it that gives one the assurance that the sun is rising, if not the light that puts to flight the darkness of the night, and the heat that spreads within that light? If anyone said that the sun is risen, but in spite of this, the darkness of the night appeared even thicker, and no heat could be felt, what would you say? That it was not a true sun that rose, but a false one, because the effects of the sun cannot be seen. Now, if the sight of me dispels the darkness from you, and shows you the light of truth, making you feel the heat of my grace, why do you want to rack your brains that I am not the one who operates in you?" I add, because obedience wants it so, that the other day I was thinking, if the many chastisements about which I wrote in these books should really happen, who would have the heart to be spectator of them? And the blessed Lord made me comprehend with clarity that some of them will take place while I am still on this earth, some after my death, and some will be spared in part. So I was relieved a little bit, thinking that I will not have to see them all. So here is Lady Obedience made satisfied now, after she had begun to frown at me, and to send out laments and reprimands. It seems that this blessed young lady in no way wants to adapt herself to the human reason. She does not want to get involved in any circumstance. On the contrary, it seems that she has no reason at all. And it is quite a pain in the neck having to deal with someone who does not have reason. In order to get along a little bit, it is necessary to lose one's own reason, because the young lady keeps boasting, "I have no human reason. Therefore I know not how to adapt myself to the human way. My reason is divine, and for one who wants to live at peace with me, it is absolutely necessary that she lose hers in order to acquire mine." This is how well this young lady reasons. What can one say? It is better to keep silent, because in one way or another, she always wants to be right, and she glories in giving you all the wrong. October 23rd, 1900. True love never remains alone. This morning, after I received communion, my adorable Jesus made me see the confessor who was placing the intention of having me suffer the crucifixion. I felt my poor nature reluctant, not because I did not want to suffer, but because of other reasons, which it is not necessary to describe here. But Jesus, as though lamenting about me, said to Father, "She does not want to submit herself." I was moved at his lament. Father renewed the command, and I submitted myself. After I suffered a little, since I could see Father there present, the Lord said, "My beloved, here is the symbol of the sacrosanct Trinity, myself, Father, and you. My love, even ab eterno, meaning from eternity, was never alone, but always united in perfect and reciprocal union with the divine persons, because true love never remains alone, but produces other loves, and delights in being loved back by the loves which it itself has produced. And if it is alone, either it is not of the nature of divine love, or it is only apparent. If you knew how much I delight and take pleasure in being able to continue in the creatures that love which reigned from eternity, and reigns still now in the most holy Trinity. This is also why I say to you that I want the consensus of the intention of the confessor united with me, so as to be able to continue this love more perfectly, symbolic of the sacrosanct Trinity. October 29th, 1900. The most essential and necessary thing in a soul is charity. After having gone through a few days of privation and of silence, this morning, as blessed Jesus came, I said, "It shows that my state is no longer your will." And he, "Yes, yes, rise and come into my arms." At these words, I forgot about the painful state of the past days, and I ran into his arms. And since I could see his side open, I said, "My beloved, you have not admitted me to draw from your side for some time. I pray you to admit me today." And Jesus, "My beloved, please drink as much as you like and satiate yourself." Who can say my contentment, and with what avidity I placed my mouth to drink at that divine font? After I drank to my fill, to the point of having no more room to contain even just one more drop, I detached myself, and Jesus told me, "Are you satiated? If you are not, feel free to keep drinking." And I, "Satiated, no, because the more one drinks at this font, the more one's thirst increases. But since I am very limited, I am incapable of containing more." After this I saw other people with Jesus, and he said, "The most essential and necessary thing in a soul is charity. If there is no charity, it happens as to those families or kingdoms that have no rulers. Everything is upset. The most beautiful things remain obscured. One can see no harmony. Some want to do one thing, some another. The same happens in the soul in which charity does not reign. Everything is in disarray. The most beautiful virtues do not harmonize among themselves. This is why charity is called queen, because she has regime, order, and disposes everything. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 4, Part 3. Fiat.